Hey, happy Wednesday. It's the CHGO Fire Podcast. I'm Pat McCraney. He's Alex Campbell. We are presented by PointsBet. Use promo code CHGO when you sign up to get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. Alex,
Pat,
we're back.
We are back. Episode 2. We have made it multiple episodes. So
we were not canceled. Yes.
Congratulations to us.
It's good to be here. Now, the question is it good to be a Fire fan right now?
Definitely a mixed bag. Obviously, what we talked about last week was Jairo Torres' arrival.
Yeah.
Chris Mueller's impending signing. So how did those guys do in their first week as members of the Chicago Fire? Well, Jairo Torres didn't do anything.
I went to training on Thursday, and I'm looking at the guys coming out, and I say to Elizabeth Sanchez, the Fire's extraordinary PR person, E, where's Jairo? And she says, that's probably a question you should ask Ezra. And I knew then something had gone wrong. And that thing wrong is apparently a hip injury that the Fire say happened in his last game for Atlas. However, we know Jairo trained last Tuesday. He did not train on, I think he tweaked it on Wednesday, did not train Thursday, obviously did not play. I don't know if he's trained this week. Ezra has a news conference scheduled right after this show where we're going to hopefully find out some more information. But hopefully, Ezra had a quote last week. He said something to the extent of, we'd rather him have to miss 1 game than miss 8. I'm on board with that 100%. If he did have to get a little bit of rest before he plays, consistent minutes for the Fire, so be it. Big picture is more important than the small picture. But after Ezra saying he's going to get minutes, it was really disappointing that they went into Atlanta without Jairo Torres.
Chris Mueller, though, did get minutes.
He did.
The reason he got so many minutes, not so good. The Fire were trailing to a first half Cisneros hat trick.
Yeah.
Ronaldo Cisneros of Atlanta gets his first MLS hat trick. So Chris Mueller gets subbed on at halftime, plays 45 minutes. Bright moments. You can see why the Fire signed him. He's going to start now this Saturday, right?
I would suspect yes. Yeah. I would think, he probably plays on the left again, whether Jairo's available on the right or not. Stanislav Ivanov has, after a promising start to the season, I thought, has been dreadful. And I think it's, if obviously Jairo can start, he will in that case. And having those 2 wingers will definitely help. Will it be enough? That's the question. We learned a lot of things about the Fire in this game. We learned how important Rafael Shihas is because the back line was not good, even though it had been good all season. He's vitally important to the team, almost too important, you could argue, to the team. Gaston Jimenez was missing. He's a mixed bag of some supporters love him and some hate him, but I think he really was missing from the game. And you made a point when we were talking earlier, Alex. It's not so much him, it's just the fact that that's experience out there.
Yeah, Chihos and Jimenez, I think, have both been good in different ways this season. Rafael Chihos, when he's been on the field, has been everything Fire fans could have asked for. He's provided leadership that this team needed. He's been the captain of this team. He's also just been a really good presence, as you mentioned, in the back line. Gaston Jimenez, I was among the crowd who was not happy to see him re-sign to a designated player contract this season. He has been better so far this season when he has played than he was last year. And to your point, Pat, it might less, though, be about how well those players have been playing and more about the fact that those are 2 guys in their 30s who provide a lot of experience for this team, because when you look at the other guys who were playing in this game, there was a lot of youth back there. Gaga Slanina, Miguel Navarro, Mauricio Pineda, Carlos Tehran, just Fede Navarro, just so many young players out there. And that inexperience, I think, really showed against an Atlanta team who, though they have a lot of young players themselves, are going to present a lot of challenges to you from an attacking standpoint. And we just saw, Pat, every time Atlanta picked up the ball, it felt like the Fire were scrambling back and that there was no protection for that back line as Atlanta's counterattack just ran roughshod in that entire first half.
And Carlos Tehran seemed to be doing his best impression of Francisco Calvo, going forward with reckless abandon and letting players by him pretty easily, which was disappointing to see. I honestly think that if there's a case where Shihas can't go again, it was a red card suspension, so he'll be back unless there's an injury. If there's a case where he can't go again, I would rather Bornstein start there alongside Omsberg than Tehran, which is tough to say because Carlos Terran's a guy who was expected to start the season at the right-sided center back position alongside Chihus, and then he got hurt. Omsberg came in. Omsberg's been excellent, main represent, and you're not going to take that away from him at this point. And Carlos Terran did himself no favors.
Yeah, the combination of Terran being over-aggressive on both of the first two Cisneros goals.
Yeah.
Terran, it's a situation as a defender, you either need to get the ball, and if you don't get the ball, you need to get the man and stop the play. And twice, in the space of about 10 minutes, Terran did neither twice. And what happens then is you leave Wyatt Omsberg, who, again, has been very good this season, but even Wyatt Omsberg would admit he is not the quickest or most athletic person playing center back in Major League Soccer. That's supposed to be Terran's job, that when there's a fire to be put out, his athleticism can make up for it. Unfortunately, what resulted was just a ton of space, Omsberg not able to cover it all, Gaga being absolutely hung out to dry. I don't really think Gaga could have done better on much of what happened. There was one goal where he lets up a rebound, he parries a goal, he parries a shot right into the path of Cisneros.
I felt like there was 2 of the 4 he could have done a little better on. That one was obviously one of them. But it's tough to stop point-blank shots for anyone, even Gaga.
Not maybe the best week Gaga would have wanted after the news cycle that we talked about last week where his international future is up for grabs. So not the greatest game at the back for anybody fire-related, Pat. Bigger picture, though, the Fire are now in last place in the Eastern Conference. The thing about that is there's a bit of a caveat. The entire Eastern Conference from top to bottom is only separated by 9 points. The differential out west, way bigger than that. Like, the West is already basically split into who's going to and not make the playoffs. So the East is a pretty tight race, but the Fire are at the back of that close-knit pack. What should Fire fans be feeling about seeing their team next to that number 14 on the table?
This is weird. So I wrote a piece on Monday for CHGO where I, was basically discussing, if Shaq has been good enough, some of the things that happened in the game, some of the bright spots. And my tweet on my personal account was something to the extent of, I am so sick of covering losses. Because I am. It's such a boring vibe. Not even a boring vibe. It's just an upsetting vibe. I just want this team to do well, as does everybody involved with the Fire. But usually, in the past, it had been me being a little too positive and Fire fans knocking me back down to earth. The response to this was, no, wait a minute. It's still early. They're only a few points out. We haven't played with our optimal 11 yet. We've got Jairo coming in. We just signed Chris Mueller. It's going to be okay. And so it was actually Fire Twitter lifting me back up, which is saying something.
Which is a weird progression. Now, there seems to be a trend in recent years, and this dates back to 2019, of seemingly every time we're hovering our hand over the panic button, deciding whether or not it's time to push it for the Fire,
there's a big win.
Well, no, I was going to say that they are about to play FC Cincinnati, which is the case on Saturday.
Last couple of years, for sure.
Yeah, so if you think back to 2019, before the pandemic, there was a game where Veljko Paunovic, then the manager, the Fire had to play the Columbus Crew and FC Cincinnati in a week. And it was basically understood you got to get something from both of these games. Long story short, there was a Fernando Adi stoppage time winner, if I remember correctly, in the Columbus game. That was that. And then FC Cincinnati, the team absolutely crumbled. And although Paunovic was not fired that next day, it was basically understood that was the end of the road that season. The same thing seemed to happen the next year, 2021 rather. Because
there was in 2020, there was a big win at Soldier Field against FC Cincinnati, if I remember correctly. Then 2 key games against FC Cincinnati in 2021. There was the most depressing game I've ever been a part of, the loss, where we were all like, so, Rafa, that's it, right? You're going to be fired? And
he didn't say yes, but his mannerisms basically said yes.
I think we talked about that on last week's show. And then there was the Luka Stojanovic Golazo 4-3 win toward the end of the season last year against FC Cincinnati. Now, we need to point out, Alex, that FC Cincinnati is not garbage.
They are not your slightly younger selves, FC Cincinnati. This team is scoring goals. Brandon Vasquez won off the lead in the MLS Golden Boot race.
They're in 5th.
They have back-to-back clean sheets, which is something this team has never been particularly good at. So, again, this is less the, oh boy, FC Cincinnati's rolling into town, you need to win this game, and more of a, hey, you can't afford to take this game lightly, especially as we'll talk about later in the show, how the schedule looks coming up. So, is this a must-win game for the Fire?
I think Is it a must-win? No. But it's close to it. We're going to talk about this a little bit more in the next segment, but with the next 3 games, the 2 New York teams on the road and then Toronto on the road, the Fire aren't back at home until mid-June there's a break after the Toronto game. It kind of feels like they need to take 3 points and stop the bleeding now. 3 points would probably jump them back somewhere near the playoff line. And, if it's a promising game, if Torres and Mueller play, if Kasper Shabilko plays, I do think he'll be back this week and he does something. If Shaq can produce something other than a PK, the assist was pretty. I got to give him that. I don't think I was kind of hard on Shaq in the piece for CHGO on Monday, but the assist was beautiful. But we do need more from him. He's a highly played DP. We need more from Shaq. So I don't think that's unfair at all. But if all that comes together against FC Cincinnati and there's a big win, maybe you're feeling all right. In addition
to Vasquez scoring goals, Lucho Acosta coming off a very good performance. He was included in the MLS Team of the Week this past week. Cincinnati look like they're putting a few things together. Fire against FC Cincinnati, primetime Saturday night, 7 p.m. at Soldier Field. We will cover that game as we cover all things here at CHGO. And Pat, why don't you tell the people about what the best way to support CHGO is right now?
Do you know what it is, Alex?
I think it's PointsBet.
The best way to support CHGO is to download the PointsBet app and use code CHGO when you sign up. If you do that right now, you'll get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. But that's not it. If you make a $50 or more first-time deposit, you'll receive a free CHGO membership, which unlocks all of our web content, including my stories and everybody else's, and you'll even get a free shirt of your choice from the CHGO locker, which, as we've told you, should in fact be the Fire shirt. That's $2,000 in free bets, a free CHGO membership, and a free t-shirt from the CHGO locker, all for making more than a $50 first-time deposit at PointsBet. If you have questions about this, you can email pointsbet@allchgo.com and we'll help you out. It's your home for live in-play betting, and it just got even better, introducing PointsBet's new feature, live NBA same-game parlay. For the first time ever, you can build the perfect live NBA same-game parlay only with PointsBet. Combine your favorite bets anytime during the game. Do you want more? You should. You can also boost your live same-game parlays. Watch live, parlay live, boost live with PointsBet. And now, Alex, as I told you earlier today, online sign-up is available in Illinois. You don't have to go anywhere. Sign up on your phone. You can do the whole thing, start to finish, right there on your phone. So what are you waiting for? Once the game starts, don't just bet. Live your bet life with PointsBet. Do you have a gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700.
And of course, that's not the only way you can support CHGO. You can support CHGO directly by signing up for a subscription. There's also podcasts, live shows, every team, every day covered here at CHGO. Post-game shows of big events as well. Premium written content if you're a member. If you are a member, like all of Pat's Fire coverage at allchgo.com. That is ALLCHGO.com. Pat already mentioned there's a whole lot of dope merch. Fire shirts coming soon. You get a free shirt when you become a member, and you get a members access, I should say, to the members only Discord. We're going to try to engage.
I thought you were giving away members only jackets. I thought you were going to say that. You remember members only jackets? Those were the best.
That would be
good.
Yeah,
we don't have that.
Sorry. Yeah, no, that would also be good.
That'd be sweet.
So yeah, Discord, get on there. Good place to post questions. Good community for not only Fire discussion but soccer discussion and all the other teams covered here at CHGO as well. Speaking, Pat, of online engagement, we're going to do a bit of a mailbag here in segment 2. We got some questions from some of you listening and watching.
Real
on
quick, Spinning
Twitter.
Fire is in the chat, and he's saying, is this live or is it pre-recorded? Tell the man.
It's live.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah,
It's live. You're actually watching us live.
Yeah, just now, the White Sox game has been postponed because the Guardians, of course, are full of COVID, which still a thing.
I can't say that for sure because you might be listening to this at a later time. But if you're watching this on YouTube
or Twitter,
12:15 on Wednesday, right now it is 12:30. We're live.
I don't know. You just looked at your wrist. Is that even a watch?
Yeah.
I think you faked
So,
it.
Mailbag, thank you to all of you who, on short notice, gave us some questions here on Twitter. The first one is going to come from Playing With Fire. And Playing With Fire asks, is it too early to panic? We kind of covered that already. Probably not. Probably a little early, but, get the button out of the drawer. Is George Heights the man for the job when potentially Garth Lagerwey could be leaving Seattle given recent events? He sees this as a pie-in-the-sky scenario. So, Pat, Garth Lagerwey, a former associate of the Chicago Fire, been the general manager in Seattle for a number of years. An off-season survey of MLS front office personnel done over at The Athletic revealed that Lagerwey is far and away the most respected front office person in the league.
And he's from Elmhurst.
His team results bear that out. Seattle just becoming the first ever MLS team to win the CONCACAF Champions League. Pat, Garth Lagerwey is out of contract in Seattle at the end of the season. Is this as pie in the sky as Playing with Fire thinks it is?
It might be, because I don't think Garth wants a lateral move of any kind. I think that, he probably wants a team president job or something along those lines. However, I will say this. If Georg Heights if this team doesn't make the playoffs after 3 straight seasons of Georg Heights, I don't think you can keep him around at that point. More teams make the playoffs than miss in MLS, so to have missed 3 years in a row, I'm not saying they will. Maybe they'll go on a run, and if they go on a run, maybe they keep him. But if Garth is available, he's kind of the best guy for the job. I think you at least have to look at it. There were rumors that Joe Mansueto wanted Garth a long time ago when he first came in, and Don Garber crushed that. I don't know that was ever true, but I would absolutely love to see him here.
Yeah, because as far as we know, there was never an official interview with Garth Lagerwey for that position. And I really think regardless of how it got there, that's kind of a damning thing that happened last time, is that Garth Lagerwey, being a Chicago native, was not at least offered the opportunity to speak with the Fire about that job. He was not asked by the Fire to speak about that job. So even if his answer to the question is, no, I'm looking for something other than a different team to be the GM of, I think you at least have to make the call, and you at least have to ask. I would agree, though, it is probably pie in the sky, but hey, stranger things have happened in this league. Next up from Justin Witt, what's the realistic expectation for the next 4 matches? Looking at this road trip, if you're still only on 10 points at the end of it. So after this game against Cincinnati at home, Pat, very tough next 3 on the road coming up as the Fire swing out east. They do double duty in New York. They're at the Red Bulls, then at NYCFC, and then at Toronto.
And it's a Wednesday, Sunday, I believe, in New York. So it's a tighter turnaround.
Red Bulls have been good this year.
Yeah.
NYCFC dangerous as always. Toronto on the up after a disastrous year last year.
Yeah.
What is realistic to expect from that road trip?
So we're saying the 4 games in total, right?
Yeah. Is 4 points enough to expect? Is that realistic?
I think 5 would be grasping at straws. I think that would be a little bit too optimistic, honestly. I would love anything more than 5 points, but I honestly don't see it happening. But I've been wrong before many times, so maybe they'll prove me wrong.
Yeah, it's tough to see again. The Red Bulls have looked really impressive this year. It seems like the stuff they started to put into practice last year, which honestly, for the first time ever, it started to feel more like Red Bull were part of the Red Bull ecosystem. Yes, there was the sale of Tyler Adams to Leipzig a few years ago, which kind of like cemented that relationship. But it's never truly felt like they're connected to that Leipzig-Salzburg apparatus over in Europe. And the style of play that team is playing now does clearly look identifiable as Red Bull football and seems to be paying dividends. They seem to have a collection of players there who are able to execute those ideas. NYCFC, I mean, anytime you go to Yankee Stadium, it's kind of not soccer to a degree because of the field.
I think they're playing that one at Citi Field.
So that was at Citi Field. Okay.
I think so.
Still a baseball field, but hopefully not a trapezoid, hopefully an actual rectangle. I mean, Tati Castellanos is still scoring goals as long as he's here. He's probably not in MLS much longer, to the delight of literally everybody who ever has to play NYCFC. But that just continues to look like a well-built team. And then Bob Bradley is now running the ship in Toronto. Lorenzo Insigne is not here yet, so I guess that is the only silver lining, is you don't have to contend with him in this matchup. But yeah, the Fire, it really, I think, puts the microscope on this FC Cincinnati game this weekend as why you really need 3 points out of it, because there's nothing guaranteed about those next 3.
It's just a big, I don't think the road woes are a thing as much anymore as they were under Wiki and under Pano during that stretch where they just could not win on the road no matter what. I could see them pulling one out, but that Cincinnati game is going to be key. You want 3 points. You want that momentum going into the road trip. If you don't get it, you're going to continue to get people, turning on the team being angry at the team, and I don't think that's unfair. So it's hard to defend last place. As much as, they've made solid moves, and I like Ezra. Shaq was a big-time signing. Mueller was a great signing. Jairo looks to be a good signing. Shihus was a fantastic signing. And they're in last place. It's hard to defend.
You have to have something to show for it. It's not enough to win. Yeah. Winning the offseason is great for clicks. It's great for engagement. It's great for attention on the team early. But winning the offseason doesn't actually get you anything in the standings. It's got to translate, or no one is going to care that you won the offseason. Because plenty of people around MLS media, the Fire were a popular pick for who had the best offseason in MLS. Yes, it takes time to get everybody bedded in together. Yes, Jairo Torres hasn't played yet. Yes, Chris Mueller is new and kind of came out of nowhere. Yes, there's been injuries. But to your point, eventually, this has got to start seeing results. And even though so many teams in MLS make the playoffs, you are out of the picture eventually, even though, it can happen early, even though so many teams get in. Our final mailbag question, Pat, from Tim V. And this is kind of more of an existential Fire question. Other than being a place to ship Aliseda and his contract, does the partnership with FC Lugano in Switzerland appear to be benefiting the Fire yet? Will it? How? Short-term answer is yes, because they were able to ship out Nacho Aliceda's contract and able to sign Jairo Torres. Even though we haven't seen Jairo Torres kick a ball yet for the Fire, I think we mentioned this last week, his impact on the Fire will not be any worse than Nacho Aliceda's was.
No, it's... Have we seen any other tangible benefits from the partnership yet? I don't think so, but that's a huge one. And we know this from the Red Bull Group and NYCFC and some of the other teams that own a team abroad. Having a second team in another league is a great way around certain MLS rules, and it's not a bad thing. So
it's also a way in the future. This is the thing. Right now, we only think of Lugano because of Aliceda as a place to store unwanted contracts and move money around, and to your point, get around the MLS roster rules. There's no reason in the future this can't work in reverse, where if Lugano is able to sign a young, promising player from somewhere in Europe who maybe isn't quite ready to make the step to a top 5 league yet, maybe that player can come over and benefit the Fire as well.
There's also a window timing thing, and Georg Heitz explained this to me, where because of the windows being slightly different, there would be opportunities to sign a player to Lugano where you wouldn't necessarily be able to bring them into MLS at a certain time. And so it's a way to get them into the larger organization and then go from there. So it wasn't like they spent the money on Lugano that they should have spent on the Fire here. I don't see any negative here at all toward having the sister club in Switzerland. I think they're in 4th place. They're doing fairly well. I don't think we've seen any other benefit other than the Aliceda to Torres transition, but I think it's a great move by Joe and his team.
MLS roster rules are fickle things. Joe Mansueto about a month ago became, I think, the first other MLS owners, Arthur Blank being one of them in Atlanta, have hinted that they'd like to see the roster rules open up. Joe Mansueto went full on the record and said he thinks the roster rules need to be opened up, and because Joe wants to spend money. So again, the couple mil he had to spend for Lugano is nothing relatively here. And if in the short term, if all Lugano is a way to just carve out a loophole in the MLS roster rules, in the short term, I think it is worth it for the Fire. To Pat's point, I don't know if it really has any downside.
Right.
I think we're not going to name names, but we can probably think of other players currently on that Fire roster who could also see their futures in Lugano, whether it's for a monetary reason or simply to get them into form or give them some sell-on value of some sort. So it's a big question mark right now.
I feel like even if you're Nacho Aliceda, we look at it here as he was shipped out to get rid of his deal. But if you're Nacho, and he still has some promise as a player, right? Putting him in a situation where he's in front of more European scouts than he would be necessarily here. He's in Europe playing. I don't think was necessarily a bad thing for him either. So this is one where I got to give it to the Fire. I think it's been a good thing all around so far.
So, let's see here. Moving on next in the show, we're going to take another quick break here, but this break is to tell you about our points bet pick of the week. Pat, we didn't have great luck last week. We said over 3.5 total goals in the Arsenal Leeds game.
It was looking good for a while.
Oh, my gosh.
Arsenal were 2-0 up.
20 minutes in, they're up 2 with the playing
with
against
red
10
yeah.
men.
And then Arsenal was content to just kind of pass it around and
make things annoying for the next 7 minutes.
There was a Leeds goal, so we finished just under the 3.5. So that was a failure.
So that wasn't great,
Yeah.
but we're gonna change tactic this week for our points back pick of the week. Instead of rooting for goals, we're rooting against goals. And the game we're looking at is Greuther Fürth versus Augsburg in the Bundesliga in Germany, Saturday, 8:30 a.m. Greuther Fürth are already relegated. They've only scored 27 goals all season.
I just want to point out that this is a game that has big U.S. ties. Julian
Green.
And
Green, World Cup hero.
Pepe.
And Ricardo Pepi, who kind of plays soccer for Augsburg, doesn't really play soccer for Augsburg. Anyway, Fürth never score, period. Augsburg struggling to score in general. They rarely score more than 2 goals in a match. These teams drew 0-0, Pat, back in December. And right now on PointsBet, under 2.5 total goals is plus money at plus 195. So we think there is some excellent value to be had here in a game that is probably going to be a dreadful thing to watch. I do not recommend watching this game.
Watch the game.
I would bet on the game and then not watch it because it's not worth 2 hours
just
of
check
your
your
time.
account 2 hours later and say,
Yeah,
oh, cool, we won.
I don't know if it's worth 2 minutes of your time.
The thing with the Bundesliga is that you usually see goals there. There are usually lots of goals there. We do not expect goals.
No goals here. Nothing to play for Greuther Fürth. Augsburg are starting to look fairly comfortably safe from relegation by scoring 1, maybe 2 goals a game. So yeah, bet the under on that one. There's probably some value there. Pat, we've talked a bit today about the Fire's loss. We didn't really get into the details.
The worst thing that happened in that game did not involve the Fire.
No, and honestly, the most noteworthy thing that happened in that game wasn't even Ronaldo Cisneros' hat trick, which is a big deal for Atlanta. The most noteworthy thing that happened in that game was U.S. men's national team center back Miles Robinson ruptured his Achilles tendon.
It was ugly.
He is out, and he knew immediately. He pointed to his Achilles right away. Athletes know when injuries that serious happen. He's out for the remainder of the MLS season for sure. His World Cup is in doubt. So I think the first question that a lot of people started asking, Pat, is this a turf problem? We've got some perspective here in Chicago because basically once the Fire and the Bears were sharing Soldier Field last year, every visiting coach who came in complained a ton about it, and I think rightly so because it was just not a good surface to play soccer on. It was very bouncy. It just was hard. It wasn't ideal. But now we have the question about turf, this coming on the heels of Seattle's João Paulo tearing his ACL on the turf up at Seattle, which seems to be the biggest defender in MLS in the CCL final. So, first of all, do you think this is an overblown thing about the turf? Is it just bad timing?
I think there's something to it. The worst thing that you'll see at Soldier Field is it was the Nashville game that was the day after the Notre Dame-Wisconsin game at Soldier Field.
Oh, yeah.
The turf was
can't believe that scheduling.
Unplayable. Like, the sod was unplayable. There was chunks missing everywhere. The ball, you could not pass the ball on the ground. It was one of those games where you watch it for 10, 15 minutes, you're like, there's no way either team is scoring a goal here. It's just not happening. Nobody could get anything going, and it was ugly. And yes, that's a problem that the Fire need to deal with. And then the gridiron lines are ugly and not aesthetically pleasing. But the situation we have in Atlanta and many other MLS cities with the
New England, Portland, Seattle,
various forms of artificial turf is sometimes players get hurt, and I don't know that I don't know for sure that the turf would have done anything. And maybe a similar move on grass would have caused the same result. Maybe it was his Achilles was about to go and he didn't know it at all. I don't know. But I do know that it was tough to see because it looked like to me he pointed at his Achilles and he pointed at the turf, and that made me, as a U.S. fan, I'm thinking, well, there goes Miles.
So Miles Robinson again. The most comparable injury is to a relevant player, Aaron Long, who is recently back to full fitness after missing a lot of time. Aaron Long was at about 8 months for New York Red Bulls for his Achilles recovery. That would put Miles Robinson back like the week before the World Cup starts.
Which at that point, do you bring him in for depth?
I think the only way Miles Robinson probably goes to the World Cup is if there are more injuries and you just need all bodies who are available. So in terms of where that leaves the United States men's national team, the two names who are now sharpied into the roster if they're healthy are definitely Walker Zimmerman and Chris Richards. No doubt that those two guys, if they're fit, are going to the World Cup. The question is, you're going to probably take 4 center backs. Maybe you're even going to take 5 with the 26-man roster. So where does that leave the rest of the pool? And we're going to take a look now at some of the options. So at the top here, we have Tim Ream, 46 caps. He's been kind of out of the picture for a while, Pat. He's 34 years old. But the biggest thing Tim Ream has going for him is he just played next to Anthony Robinson for a full season for Fulham, who won the championship. And Tim Ream captains that team. So yes, there are concerns about Tim Ream's fitness. There are concerns about Tim Ream's ability to play out from the back. But he has a tight-knit relationship with the guy who's going to start at left back for the U.S. men's national team. So I think he warrants inclusion in this conversation
as
at least.
One of the 4?
I just think
certainly.
I think he has to be at least mentioned as a candidate to get on this roster.
I think so too. And it's the standard Fulham, yay, we won. Oh, we've been relegated. So we're on the uptick here with Fulham. So we're in good coming off a good season for Fulham. Tim Ream played in I think every single game for them, if very close to it, if not all of them. Like you pointed out, he started alongside Robinson. I think there's something to be said for that. There's something to be said for that level of experience. I don't know that Greg loves him, but I think that if you're talking about building a complete roster, you want some level of experience there. I think he goes.
Next on that list of caps is the man who's kind of been an elephant. The elephant not in the room as of late. John Brooks, still 29 years old, currently playing for Wolfsburg in Germany, about to be a free agent at the end of the season. The man with Illinois tattooed on his bicep. Pat, about a week ago, Greg Berhalter had a press conference. And he was talking about guys who might get a look in this June window camp. And one of the guys he mentioned was Cameron Carter-Vickers, who's also on that list. We'll get to in a second. He said Cameron Carter-Vickers is getting called in. He declined to say if John Brooks would be joining that group. That was before Miles Robinson got hurt. So the question, Pat, is this injury to Miles Robinson enough to bridge whatever divide exists between Brooks and Berhalter?
I think the only way Brooks gets in is by necessity, and so this could be it. We don't know what it is in particular. I don't, Brooks was phenomenal until he wasn't, and Greg may be right to be going in a different direction. And this is one of those cases where there's always this, do you go with an MLS guy? There's always, concerns that Greg is too focused on bringing in MLS guys over European guys. But this is a case where I do, if I had my choice, it would be Miles Robinson and Walker Zimmerman from what we saw during qualifying. Does Brooks get in the 4? I feel like the answer to that is no, just based on what we've seen. Should he? Maybe.
We're probably about 2 weeks away from the June roster coming out, so keep your eyes on that. The next name up on this list, Pat, is a guy we mentioned briefly already, Aaron Long, New York Red Bulls, Greg Berhalter favorite, captaining that Red Bulls team, who's done surprisingly well this year. I think he's a lock for June, and he seems to be, with Robinson's injury, a strong candidate to get on the World Cup roster in November.
I would think. Like you said, he's a Greg favorite. He's playing on a quality team right now. There's something to be said for that. He's going to be brought in. If he does well, I think he's getting in. So,
because then, Pat, now we get to guys with single-digit caps. Speaking of Greg Berhalter favorites, we've got Mark McKenzie there. Only 5 caps, including one very roller coaster of a Nations League final against Mexico, which was a whole lot of bad and a whole lot of good. He's not playing in Belgium right now for Genk. That team has apparently rotated their center backs like crazy this year. It's been hard for anybody in that defense to get consistent minutes. But he's just not playing much soccer right now. So unless that changes in the fall, I don't think you want to bring in a guy who simply isn't kicking a ball much.
No, and a lot could change between now and the fall. But as of right now, I would say no.
I just love Genk. It's my favorite club name in Europe.
Are you a big Genk fan?
I mean, who doesn't love Genk?
You know how people have Americans have weird attachments to European teams for I loved playing them in FIFA or whatever. That could be your team besides Arsenal, Lawrence.
Genk.
Not to be confused with Ghent, who are only one letter different and have the exact same color scheme. Belgian Pro League. Figure it out.
I do confuse those two teams off.
Like, which one did Kevin De Bruyne come through at? No idea. It was one of them.
One of them.
Just don't remember which one. Anyway, speaking of guys who aren't playing any soccer right now, James Sands, who's going to the Europa League final, kind of. I don't think he's going to play any soccer in the Europa League final. He's on an 18-month loan deal at Rangers. So the expectation with these kind of MLS 18-month loans to Europe is that the first 6 months are for just an adjustment period to get used to the environment, to get used to the team, and then next year you're going to play a lot. So maybe James Sands is going to be playing a lot more soccer once we get into the fall, but right now he's not. He is also an option as a backup number 6, although Kellen Acosta seems to kind of have that locked down right now, at least in the national team scene. So Sands may be a Swiss Army knife guy. Maybe a guy, though, actually who really benefits if the roster expands from 23 to 26 as a guy who fills multiple positions.
Yeah, I could see him getting on with the expansion, but other than that, it doesn't feel like one for right now. But again, it is May. The World Cup is in November. A lot can and will happen, as we saw this past weekend. So we shall see. Who's left? CCV?
So two names left. Cameron Carter-Vickers, who has made the Scottish Premiership Team of the Year, as Celtic are going to win the title in Scotland. So a very good season for CCV. Still technically a Tottenham Hotspur player. Still on loan there. I would expect, though, Celtic are going to try to make that permanent this summer based on how good he has been. It'll depend on what Tottenham is asking for a fee. I've also heard CCV, I've been told he's not going to win it. He's going to get votes for Player of the Year in Scotland. Like, yes, the Scottish Premiership and being a Celtic player is not the hardest job in the world, but, like, that's not nothing.
That might be worthy of a Tottenham DVD. Our lone guy got votes for Player of the Year in Scotland.
I mean, they don't win anything else.
That's the only... You got to celebrate your victories when they come, Lawrence.
Does CCV's Team of the Season award at Celtic get to go in the largely bare Tottenham trophy cabinet?
Yeah.
So does that count?
Yeah, and there will be a commemorative DVD that's sold out outside whatever they call White Hart Lane now.
I think it's just the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Yeah. Put
a name on that. Building's amazing. Get someone to pay you money for your building being amazing. Anyway, we already mentioned CCV going to be in the team in June. I'm going to be at the game in Cincinnati against Morocco, so I'm hoping to see CCV play. So we'll see how he does. Basically, these series of June games, the two friendlies, the Nations League games, are Cameron Carter-Vickers trying out to be considered in the fall. There are going to be 2 more friendlies in September, reportedly in Europe, reportedly against teams from Asia. Nothing confirmed about that yet, but basically I'd say don't be surprised if you see, South Korea and Japan friendlies in like Germany and France or something, or Germany and England in September. The last name on this list, Pat, is another guy who, like CCV, has his stock rising quickly. That is Eric Palmer Brown. EPB. We love acronyms here. We love 3-letter acronyms here in the U.S. center back pool. EPB, another one of those guys who we first saw put on a U.S. senior team jersey in that Dave Sarakin era. Brought back in recently by Berhalter. Got on the field as a right wing back trying to close out the Mexico game. Eric Palmer Brown, he was a Man City player. He's gotten out of there. He's bounced around a bit. He's currently playing for Troyes, I believe is how you say it, in France, a team who was a candidate for relegation in Ligue 1 this year, but who are comfortably mid-table, in part thanks to their defense, which has been anchored by Eric Palmer Brown. He's started most of the games for them and in Ligue 1. If that continues, I mean, on form, he's been one of the better U.S. defenders in anywhere, but especially in Europe over this season.
I would like to see him included in the roster, and it kind of, looking at the list as a whole, it kind of goes to show that while Miles' injury is depressing, there is some depth there, and there are some guys that you're excited to see. One guy you left off the list was Wyatt Omsberg.
I apologize to Wyatt if you're watching, or anyone back in Maine if you're watching. Our apologies. Hey, again, you never know. This is really wide open to a degree. We're looking at guys that have single-digit caps.
The trajectory's there, though. If he continues at the rate from starting the season, what we thought on the bench, to where he is now.
You're saying that the slope of his trajectory is very high.
Has there ever been a World Cup winner from Maine? I don't think so, not unless they've played for some other country. So, you know what? Has there been a Women's World Cup winner from Maine? How many other soccer players are from Maine?
Not many. So, hey, Wyatt Omsberg, USMNT center back. Again, said it earlier, stranger things have happened. I guess to close this out, though, Pat, right now, if you've got to say, let's say, if it was only a 23-man roster, because it's not for certain yet, if you only get to bring 2 more center backs in addition to Zimmerman and Richards, which 2 are you bringing?
Ream and EPB.
So I think What I think Greg Berhalter would do is I think he's going to bring Aaron Long, and I think that last spot will either go to Mark McKenzie or Eric Palmer-Brown. Mm-hmm. If I am managing the U.S. men's national team, I'm bringing John Brooks because John Brooks is just good enough to be there, and he offers some things no one else does. And I think I'm bringing CCV simply because you need that one guy who's kind of a bull in the china shop. Like Chris Richards, athletic, can pass pretty well, gives you some flexibility. John Brooks, we know, can play a good ball out from the back, opens up against teams who are sitting in the low block. Walker Zimmerman's kind of a do-it-all.
Yeah.
He's a set-piece monster. Cameron Carter-Vickers isn't the prettiest passer. He's not the prettiest dribbler. He's not the tallest. But you know what? He's going to give 110%. And if you need someone to just run through a dude, he's going to do that. Yeah. So I think, and again, it's about trajectory. Cameron Carter-Vickers looking really solid right now. Tottenham might get calls from better teams than Celtic this summer for his services.
Brian says Amsberg is 2022's Hercules Gomez from 2010. The trajectory is there. He's going to turn it into a media career after this.
You have a really top-notch podcast. Also, shout out, though, to the Football Americas guys. There's a whip-around show, not to advertise for someone else, but just cool things in soccer media. There's a whip-around show for the U.S. Open Cup tonight on ESPN+. Soccer Twitter, if you complain enough about something and if you urge people enough to do something, maybe eventually it will happen. So if you're looking for lower league soccer to watch tonight, it's going to be on ESPN+. You can tune in there. As we wind down here, Pat, speaking of lower league soccer, the Fire, 7 p.m. against Cincinnati on Saturday. Not the only team playing this weekend. There's a lot of lower league clubs.
I thought you were making an insult to the Fire and FC Cincinnati there.
No.
That's how I took it.
That wasn't a joke. Although sometimes they do play like lower league teams. But anyway, there's a bunch of local soccer that kicks off this weekend. Go check out your local club. These are teams that rely really heavily on fan support. So go out and check out a game wherever you can find one this weekend around Chicago.
You're going to be on the call on one of them.
I'm going to be on the call on two of them, actually. So some cross-promotion. Chicago House's home opener is Friday night. That's going to be down at IIT. I'm going to be on the call for that, 7 p.m. kickoff. I'll also be on the call Saturday night for Edgewater Castle's home opener, also 7 p.m. That's up at the Fire Pitch, up on the north side. So check that out locally or tune in online if you want to hear me talk about some lower league soccer.
I do.
If you would also enjoy me talking about some not as lower league soccer when it comes to the Chicago Fire. Pat, anything else for the people before we sign off?
Ezra Hendrickson's news conference is 2 minutes away. Hopefully we get some information on Jairo Torres and others. I will be tweeting that out as soon as I get off the air, so we'll see how that goes.
If you're not following us on Twitter, you should be doing that. You should be following CHGO Fire. You should be following and supporting CHGO. Be sure to support CHGO Fire and CHGO by subscribing to this show wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever. We are there. Also, go subscribe to CHGO Red Stars. Their second podcast episode will be coming out Friday as well. Red Stars 1-0 on the NWSL season, a 2-1 win over Racing Louisville, looking to keep that going this weekend as well. So I think that's going to do it, Pat, for this second edition of CHGO Fire.
Will they have us back for a third?
I mean, I hope so. If they do, we'll be back here live, 12:15 here on YouTube and Twitter. Be sure to join us then. Again, send us your questions wherever you are listening or watching this. Comment below, whether it's in a podcast review, YouTube, Twitter. If we can make that mailbag segment a thing every week, we'd really love to do that.
That was a lot of fun.
I think we really enjoy that, and we enjoy the engagement. Thank you all so much for listening, for watching. For Pat McCraney, I'm Alex Campbell. We will see you next week right here on CHGO Fire.
Later.